We're in the Rubin Museum of Himalayan Art, standing in front of one of their treasures, the Shrine Room.
This is often called the heart of the Rubin Museum. Each time it is renewed, it represents different Tibetan Buddhist tradition. This one is representative of the Kagyu traditions.
Until I began to look more seriously at Tibetan Buddhism, I assumed that there was a single tradition.
There are many Buddhist traditions that came to existence over the long history of Tibetan Buddhism. There are usually counted 4 main traditions, which are in the order of their appearance. The Nyingma, which is the ancient tradition, then Sakya, Kagyu, and the youngest, the Gelug tradition.
And this is Kagyu. And we can tell that because of the specific iconography that we can see in some of the paintings, as well as some of the sculpture.
Each Tibetan shrine room would normally have elements that are essential for representation of the Buddhist belief system and worship and ritual. And they are the representations of the Buddha's mind, such as the images and sculptures of stupas, speech, which are physical books where the Buddha's word and teachings are written, and Buddha's body, which is the images that you see of deities, teachers, and the Buddha, of course.
The books that you refer to are long individual leaves.
Tibetan books are modeled after the Sanskrit palm leaf manuscripts that came from India, which were long and narrow. And obviously there is no palm leaves in Tibet. They wrote their books on paper, but they retained this format.
And then in the middle of the shrine, we see 2 stupas.
Normally stupas are thought about as the representations of the Buddha's mind, but they're also representations of the Buddha's body. Just as the images of the physical representations of the Buddha, various deities, important Buddhist teachers in the Kagyu tradition. For Tibetans, a teacher is equal to the Buddha because according to Tibetan Buddhist beliefs, we live now in a time where the Buddha is already past. Only his teachings survive, and those who can transmit his teachings through this uninterrupted lineage of transmission are equal in value to being in the presence of the Buddha. That's why there are so many portraits of teachers in Tibetan Buddhist traditions. And here we have main representations of the Kagyu teachers, such as Milarepa, who is depicted with the hand raised to his ear.
Almost as if he's listening.
Sometimes it's explained that he's listening to his voice as he recites his poetry or verses of the songs of realization that he composed while meditating in a cave. And another important teacher, considered not specifically only within the Kagyu tradition, but universally respected in Tibetan Buddhist culture, is the Machi Labdrön, so woman teacher.
And that representation seems to me to be more dynamic than some of the other figures that are seated around her.
She is shown as a goddess or as a dakini in the dance pose while using double-sided drum, and she's also holding a skull cup in her left hand. If you look at the images of Vajrayogini, which are on the other side of the shrine room, you can see that she is also draped in a similar garment as Machi Labdrön and also has a skull cup. The implication is that the practice which she is well known for is called severance of ego, and skull cup is a reminder of a permanence and attachment to one's body.
We're seeing this Tibetan Buddhist Shrine Room on 17th Street in Manhattan, but it is in the tradition of the kinds of shrine rooms that you would find in a prosperous home of a family that practices Tibetan Buddhism.
If I were to make up a story of how all of these objects have been accumulated, it's that they were treasured over generations. Sometimes when an important event happens, a family or a person could go to a teacher and inquire whether they need to facilitate the positive outcome. And then it may happen that it would be advised that they commission a sculpture or a painting, especially if it's something towards secular goals. Or if someone passes away, then in order to ensure the person has a good rebirth in the next life, sculptures or paintings of long-life deities would be commissioned. Ushnisha Vijaya, this large sculpture that you see here,
So the individual objects then are accumulated over time and sometimes associated with specific events within the life of that family.
Also, very often when a layperson or anyone who attends a Buddhist initiation ritual, for example, that allows them to study and then practice specific meditation focused on specific deity, they would commission an image of that deity to be the basis for their visualization practices. But of course, this is the curated installation that presents the objects how they may have been displayed and used in a traditional Tibetan Buddhist household.
Each object can really focus our attention in an individual way, but then there's a kind of multiplication that results from the amassing of each of these objects.
The intent of such a space would be to make it suitable for the deities which are imagined to be residing in each image to be in the place which is worthy of them. So the incense, sound of the rituals, reciting of mantras and prayers, offerings of light and offerings to the five senses are all part of that setup in which the deities are firmly established in the abode which is worthy of their presence.